If you want to win predictably, you have to be the house. And there's only one thing that matches that narrative, that's Housecoin.
With all of these structured products being built in DeFi right now, there is a huge amount of internal leverage.
How many coins have been launched on Pump.Fun so far?
Solana, it's 420 coded, and 690 on Solana would be the ETH 10K or BTC 200K equivalent. Bidding these meme numbers seems completely retarded now, but I don't think we should forget that BTC peaked at 69,000.
I love how Max is doing everything to get us censored.
This is the hottest thing that is going on in the Sui ecosystem, because now all of a sudden it really doesn't matter where you build your application on, because all of the assets basically stay on the native chain.
There's like a few Jew tokens in there. There's a camp token that's referencing a concentration camp. There's a lot of like N-word tokens. There's a lot of like suicide related tokens. They took the worst of the worst tokens that were launched on Pump and they created this lawsuit out of it. It's pretty wild.
Good morning. Welcome back to this second edition of the Odyssey and Swag Roundtable. Today we are again joined by Onur. How are you doing? And Yuri. So what's going up? What's going on? What have we been doing in the markets the last day?
Hot air is going up, I think. Hot air rises still.
Oh, it's Fortcoin up? I don't think so. I think Fortcoin has been down just as everything else.
Yeah, it's been interesting the last couple of days since the Pump TGE, I would say.
So what's the TLDR there? What's going on in the trenches?
Most recently, Elon had an interview with Threat Guy yesterday, and he said there will be an airdrop. He said it will not be anytime soon. As a reaction to that, I think the Pump token, as well as many Pump.Fun launch tokens, went down 10, 15, 20, some even 50%. That's, I would say, like the most recent. Beyond that, everything as usual. Like, I feel like it's a sidewards waiting for the final leg type of sentiment.
Did any of you buy into the Pump ICO?
No.
I bought a little bit after it launched, I think at around 4 cents. I thought it would bounce there because people were willing to defend the ICO price, but I guess so far that thesis has not played out, but fortunately only a very small position. But what's going on your side, Yuri?
Actually not much, just enjoying European summer in Portugal still. Beach, seafood, and waiting for the final escalation in the market. For now,
everyone's waiting for it. It's not gonna come. It's not gonna happen. I think we're waiting for a non-event. No, it's not really waiting though.
Frankly, since the last recording 2 weeks ago, a lot of stuff has happened. I think ETH has been going up almost 50% since then. I think we talked not early July, but like July 10th, around that, 2 weeks ago. And back then, ETH was still at the 2,500 range, and we went up to 3,800 in the meantime. So yeah, it's not like nothing has happened. I still think we've seen a significant amount of strength, especially with ETH, kind of for the first time in a long era. Also, if you look at ETH BTC, it's the first break of downwards market structure ever since 2022. So if there's an all season, I think it's loading up right now.
That's a good point. Yeah. If you zoom out, I think you're right. Also, maybe, speaking of like bull market peak indicators, all of them like are pretty in the green, and they're pretty like in the hold scenario, like when it comes to unrealized profits, or when it comes to even like Bitcoin dominance is still relatively high. And I think for a proper peak, we need like Bitcoin to go up, and then Bitcoin dominance, BTC.D, we need it to go down to like the 40, 50, at least 60% ranges. That hasn't happened yet.
Do you think BTC dominance has topped though, like for real this cycle? Or do you think we'll see one last leg up, one flush on alts, and then it's down only for BTC.D? from there?
I don't know. It doesn't really matter because in this part of the cycle, I'm more exposed to non-BTC assets anyways.
Well, then it does matter, because if BTC.D rises, you're gonna underperform.
No, but that's just like that's a micro optimization. The main thesis is still that BTC.D will go down, and if that thesis is wrong, then my position is wrong regardless. I don't want to micro optimize and.
But that's not a micro optimization. I mean, if you, I can speak from my own experience because I've been exposed into alts ever since probably late 2023, and ever since then, BTC.D has kept up rising, and the alt performance is flat on some, down on some others, up on some others. So it's very, like, I would say it is a very significant metric to pay attention to. I mean, of course, the causalities have changed quite a bit versus the prior cycles, just because the role and the perception of BTC as an asset has changed. It's now much more institutionalized, and it's not more that narrative of, okay, BTC at the forefront of this whole blockchain tech sector, but now BTC is finally being recognized as a macro asset, whereas ETH, Sol, and most of the other alts are now finally being recognized as a technology asset or as a commodity within that technology sector. So I would say it does matter. It's not a micro optimization. I mean, on the lower time frames, obviously it is, but in the grand scheme of things, you want to keep track of that trend.
My point is, in this part of the cycle, which I consider to be the last phase of a 4-year bull cycle, I don't want to be too exposed to Bitcoin. I'd rather be exposed to a higher risk reward asymmetric upside assets. And I think when we are in the depth of the bear market, I personally want to increase my Bitcoin exposure to the extent that I may even just hold Bitcoin solely. That's the point I'm making. I think I don't care too much about if dominance is going to go high in the short term and then going to drop a little bit. My main assumption is still, I mean, we spoke about this last time. Like, I don't think money will flow into alts like they used to in previous cycles in general. But I think some assets, like Hype, for example, or I still see Ethereum in that category to some extent, who have underperformed compared to BTC. I think those are like the higher risk rewards assets right now, and that's the point that I'm making. So, in general, over multiple cycles and years, I think it's fine to pay attention to dominance, but in the last part of the cycle, I don't try to optimize in the sense of like, oh, I'm going to hold BTC now until it reaches another all-time high, and then I'm going to rotate to some other assets. That's what I mean.
No, I think that's reasonable. But I mean, again, BTC.D, it doesn't, irrespective of BTC price action, it's only respective relative to alt price action. But yeah, if you have the thesis, we are in the late stage of the cycle and alts will outperform no matter what in that given time horizon of maybe 3 to 6 months where you think the cycle will continue or peak, then yeah, I mean, it's obviously makes sense to be overexposed alts. One funny thing that we could note in the markets over the last weeks, though, is that compared to this mainstream narrative that the classic alt seasons are over, it's not really the case in the early stages, because what we've seen over the last weeks is ETH outperformance, then Sol catching up, and then all of these Dino coins coming back because people suddenly started launching these stupid treasury companies around them. So while we will unlikely see like a large scale alt season, the beginning stages have been exactly the same, and probably with the most undeserving coins of an alt season that are still out there. If we think at the XRPs, HBARs, Algos, Cardanos, etc. of the world.
Yeah, I actually agree on this. I just wanted to say the same. I'm sorry. Like my perception of the market covers quite well with what you guys said so far. I'm actually not a huge believer in a massive Altcoin season compared to what we have seen in previous years, 2021, 2017, for example, just because there are like too many coins out there. Like the market is just way too big. So when liquidity enters, usually what we have seen, for example, in 2020, we have seen Ethereum, and then there were some other plays around it. We saw like this altcoin season, if you want to call it like that. Then we had like some new players, Solana and so on and so forth. But now the market is so, I would say, diluted that we see the what you mentioned, Max, the beginnings where everyone is feeling, oh, now there could be Altcoin season around the corner, and then just that week after the market corrects to the downside again, and then it's all over again. So I think Bitcoin dominance will actually rise again a little bit. I have strong feelings still about Ethereum and Solana, however, but the rest of the market, I'm very skeptical. Sui could be very rewarding as well because it's like kind of also a Solana play very similarly. But the rest, I don't know, I think will have like an uphill battle just because the market is so diluted and people often forget that. I mean, Pump.Fun has more tokens right now listed than we have seen in the entire year of 2020.
No, I mean, I agree that these systemic issues of too little liquidity for too many tokens, etc., that persists and that has been persisting over the last 2 years. It's just much more important now to pick assets, to pick winners. Maybe on the Sui thesis, what's the play there? What's the narrative about Sui? I think it has gained a little bit of attention last year, but I have not kept up much with the ecosystem development there. So since you guys are very active on Sui, what's been happening in that ecosystem?
So one launch that is around the corner was actually targeted for today. Now it got postponed to Tuesday. Is Ika. People from the Cosmos ecosystem might feel a little bit reminded of it because the thesis is quite similar. So it's an MPC network built on top of Sui. So it leverages its consensus algorithm for validation. But what it basically does is that you can control any kind of asset on another chain via your Sui address. So for instance, you could build a lending protocol via Ika on Sui and say, okay, I'm borrowing 2 ETH and I deposit some Bitcoin as collateral for it. But all of these assets stay on the native chain. So you don't do any bridging. You basically just point with your address to the native assets where they actually are. And this is kind of the hottest thing, I would say, that is going on in the Sui ecosystem, because now all of a sudden it really doesn't matter where you build your application on, because all of the assets basically stay on the native chain, but the Sui blockchain becomes this meta hub, so to say, this huge liquidity and coordination hub where everything gets pointed to. And I think that's from a developer perspective, that's very appealing. From a community spirit, which is also always very important, we see a lot of excitement because so far it was rewarding to be exposed to Sui in the past couple of 12 months or so. So we have a lot of new community members. There are like also a few meme coins that performed quite well. We had Walrus, now Ika. So there's always new coming up. And they are like also, and this is what I actually find very attractive, is this close connection to the Bitcoin ecosystem, to native BTC. Native is also actually kind of a Bitcoin coordination layer that was originally supposed to launch in the Cosmos ecosystem, now decided to build it on top of Sui. So from a technical perspective, there are a bunch of very high quality projects in the pipeline. So the ecosystem is definitely alive. Yeah, so that's actually, Sui could actually be a very good bet if you ask me, but obviously no financial advice. And I'm also a little bit biased.
Onur, have you looked into it? I mean, your background in the Cosmos ecosystem with that OG vision of interoperability and chain abstraction, do you think that Sui is now fulfilling that, or is it still a long path to go?
I'm aware of Sui. I know what they're doing. I know how their technology works. But what I'm like, the exercise I focus on right now is I don't try to look at where the ecosystem could be in the future, or it could be in a couple months, or maybe even next cycle. I look at where the action is happening right now. And I analyze that a lot, and partially, in the form of like on-chain analyses, trying to look at like order flow, where it comes from, where it goes to, looking at bridge volume and so on. And, the result is always something along the lines of either it's 80 or it's 90% of the things are happening on Solana. And then, the remaining 10%, I think, are Ethereum. And then there's a small percentage of like other places such as Base or Avalanche or Sui or I don't know what. And, obviously like there's some exceptions to this. Like if you look at like Tether and Tron, I don't really believe in those numbers. But yeah, in general, I don't really have a strong opinion on like the performance of Sui or how the ecosystem is doing. I just don't think it is really relevant when it comes to where the action is happening in the cycle.
I mean, given your very strong conviction that most of it is happening on Solana, what is going on there right now? I mean, everybody, from what I'm seeing on the timeline, is very frustrated with Pump, the entire ecosystem surrounding it. Now that the price action is kind of down only, people are even more pissed at it, calling it extractive, yada yada. You have this whole Pump.Fun versus the Bonk Launchpad going on. So maybe let's dive a little deeper there. What is conflict and who seems to be winning it?
So I would argue that in any discipline in the world, the 1% outcompetes the 99%. Like that's not rocket science. Whether it's in like esports, gaming, whether it's in real sports, or whether it's in like on-chain trading. This is basically a game everyone is playing, trying to make money and win in the casino. If you want to win predictably, you have to be the house. And there's only one thing that matches that narrative. That's Housecoin. No, just joking. Obviously, like Pump.Fun, provided the shovels and the gold rush. People are hating for two reasons. One, it's more likely they're part of the 99% that lose money. And two, they're rage baiting because they didn't get the airdrop that was promised to them 3,000 years ago, right? So that's the big problem here. And people have always been bitching about airdrops. Like as long as I'm in crypto, and I think like as cosmonauts, we know this. I mean, I'm making provocative jokes here. I hope everyone, like no one will be offended here. But like, yeah, like everyone is bitching about airdrops all the time. And everyone is entitled to their sweet free money. Everyone thinks there's some extraction going on. When in reality, the lacking thing is ownership over one's own actions. Like if people decide to gamble or trade and lose money, that's no one else's fault than your own. In that sense, I pretty much ignore that. Coming to the Bonk versus Pump issue, it's not an issue. It's just like dynamic. Yeah, it is real. It is happening. So Pump has two main products right now, the Launchpad and the DEX. The DEX is doing fine. The Launchpad lost a significant market share against Bonk in the last couple of weeks and months. Now there's two kind of like opinions here. One is the trenches have moved to Bonk, and Solana decided Bonk is the place to be now. I'm moving, like I'm leaving aside the Jupiter Launchpads, the Moonshot Launchpad, and a Jupe Studio, as well as like Believe app and all these other launchpads. There's obviously like multiple here. And the other opinion is someone, let's call them Cabal, is trying to push Bonk and establish themselves as the new place to be on Solana, where the tranches happen, right? When I say the tranches, I'm referring to people trying to explore new tokens, run them up to millions, make a ton of money. Obviously, someone's going to lose a ton of money because of that and stuff like that. Now, I tried both launchpads, and what I can tell with 100% certainty is the Bonk launchpad is botted significantly more and crazier than Pump.Fun. Like, it's not even funny. It's insane how much it's botted right now. So my personal informed guess is there's a lot of tactical pushing going on behind the scenes, especially when it comes to launching and volumes. At the same time, in the midterm, it's a problem. In the short term, it's a problem for sure. In the long term, I don't think Pump cares too much about it because It's their bread and butter. They're still making close to $500,000 a day, I think, from the Launchpad. They're not making $3 million a day anymore, which is significantly less, but it's still a significant number, especially for buybacks and everything. I think Pump.Fun still has the bigger vision and more foresight when it comes to competing with streaming providers such as Twitch. Obviously, the irony here is Pump.Fun neither launched their own Launchpad to launch the token, nor did they use their own streaming platform to do one of the biggest interviews in the recent weeks. They used Twitch and they created like a custom token 2022 implementation, which I totally understand from a technical perspective. But it's kind of like the irony here, which could be telling why they're not, why the token is not doing so well in the short term. On the other hand, you know, not thousands, like tens or maybe hundreds of investors and employees are up 10, 100, or 1,000x on the Pump token. So profit taking after ICO it's a very normal thing. And what I pay attention to right now is to see where it finds a bottom. I think in general, you know, a company that has $2 billion in the treasury, like they have a $2 billion war chest, and the token is trading at 3-point-something billion. Now, the company is not the token, and you could argue that the buybacks only represent 25%, but I think like there's probably more to it. Then you also have to factor in some factor for growth, for future growth, and for the thing they're building. And in that sense, nothing comes as a surprise, but it remains interesting to observe. I think like Bonk can fake it until they make it when it comes to dominance and launchpads and volume and fees. I do think though that right now it's being pushed a lot behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, from the somewhat silent observer perspective, I hold quite a few of the older meme coins, but I'm not actively day trading in the trenches and rarely ever buying anything new. I don't even know if I bought anything that has emerged out of the Bonk Launchpad. But to me, it seems as if Bonk is much more of a community favorite. It is sort of the populist side that represents the 99%, whereas Pump.Fun has, of the people who have won bigly in meme coins, has probably created more wealth than Bonk Launchpad. But I mean, obviously, it leaves the other 99% behind. And these are now rallying around Bonk and trying to meme into existence that it is the more kind of culturally aligned and more organic side of the trenches. I don't know how this is going to play out. I do think that in the grand scheme of things, it is net positive or net zero. I don't think it is net negative, because you could argue, yeah, these people are just tearing apart each other, whereas they should focus on a shared vision of the trenches. But I mean, given the sort of, by an economic definition, extractive nature of the trenches, I don't think that there is a holistic alignment within that community. Coin creation, it's oversaturated anyway, but it's going to be quite interesting to monitor which one of these communities is actually emerging as the stronger one. Because I mean, that's when you really think meme coins to its logical conclusions, it's a community coin. It is completely a societal construct. It's a cultural construct. There's no physical reality or physical necessity behind it. And now playing this conflict out on the Launchpad scale, I think is quite interesting.
Just to put it in context, so the founder of Pump.Fun, Elon, has tweeted, "Fuck it, Jew mode." He's Jewish, and that's why that's like an insider joke. We're not making inappropriate jokes here. We probably do, but people that are in the trenches will understand.
Free Germans on a podcast.
All right. Speaking of 3 Germans in a podcast, so I saw this tweet that Berwick law firm or something created like a lawsuit against the entire world, basically, but mainly like Solana Foundation, including like Lily Liu, including Tolly, including Rush, including all the 3 Pump founders, Elon, Noah, and I think Dylan. And I actually examined the papers and the exhibits, and some of the examples they use are like, there's like a few Jew tokens in there. There's a camp token that's referencing a concentration camp. There's a lot of like N-word tokens. There's a lot of like suicide-related tokens. It's pretty crazy. Like they took the worst of the worst tokens that were launched on Pump, and they created this lawsuit out of it. It's pretty wild. I mean, yeah. Again,
Is there any insight in what they're trying to achieve? Like, what do they want to get out of this lawsuit?
Rico, I think, is their client, and they're claiming IP right infringements and obviously like a ton of like racism violations. But I think the main thing is like IP violations.
But isn't a RICO a type of lawsuit where if you are able to nail down one on these crimes, it applies to everybody else who did the same thing? Isn't that like this type of lawsuit that is used against like organized crime a lot? I mean, Yuri, you are a former law student. You're supposed to know.
No, I didn't came that far. For me, it stopped in the first semester. So unfortunately, I can't provide you with legal advice.
Yeah, I also don't know. I just thought it's crazy that, you know, I mean, it's not crazy, it's kind of expected, but like people are looking at, and by the way, all of these coins were like at K market cap, so they clearly died. I mean, some of them were, I don't want to name them, but there was some Obama token which is still at like 200K market cap. Yeah, it's, I don't know, it's probably not funny, but if you read it, like, you can't help it. It's absurd. Let's put it this way. It's pretty absurd.
But actually, have there been any tokens that were like also like from a more neutral point of view, a little bit critical, like a concentration camp coin or something that really got lots of momentum where you say, okay,
no,
okay.
No, like all the like Hitler or camp coins or Jew coins that I saw were dead immediately.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't think they had any relevance.
I mean, there was one with the N-word. I think that got a little bit of traction in May or June last year. I think it even got listed on Bybit. I think it was the RNT token or something. But I'm
wow.
sure it was Bybit, but it was certainly some centralized exchange.
Andrew Tate's.
Yeah, it was that one. Yeah. And I'm not even sure whether this was launched via Pump or if it's from the pre-Pump.Fun era. But I mean, there certainly have been a few that are using the word.
I remember the Daddy versus RNT wars when that happened, and then RNT was like a contender, and then he created Daddy, and all the RNT holders felt drugged.
Mm.
The trenches, they're real. But yeah, I mean, you know, like, game is game. I think what Bonk is doing works. I don't know how much it costs. I don't know if they can sustain it, but it works for the time being. So they are penetrating the market, the Launchpad market. They are gaining market share. I think they have a few real communities that they're building there. And these communities, you know, there's always this thing like, if a token makes you rich, like you never have to work again, you basically, like, that manifests and you basically stay in that thing more or less forever. So if they do that with 5 to 10 diehard community members, I think those 5 to 10 community members can each get like easily another 100 members into the ecosystem, which then yields in like thousands of new Bonk users. So again, what they're doing, I think, works. It's just like, I'm just very curious to understand if it's organic or if it's like pushed. And either way, it does work for the time being.
One quiz question. What do you think? How many coins have been launched on Pump.Fun so far?
In total?
Yeah. Estimation.
Wasn't it like 1.7 million or something?
No, way more.
Yeah.
It's way more. It must be in the hundreds of millions. I would say 400 or 500 million, maybe.
Let me look that up.
So according to Decrypt, it's 12 million.
Oh, wow. That's way less than I thought. Are you talking about migrated or launched?
Launched.
I think migrated is much less. Migrated is maybe a couple of thousand.
12 million is not that much, actually. I thought it's way more. Because like when you are on the website, sometimes you see like like every tick there's like 3 new tokens. But yeah, makes sense.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's exaggerated or understated, because if 12 million, let's say Pump.Fun has been live for around 400 days. So if you divide 12 million by 400, that's 30,000 coins a day. And if you go down, if you divide it by hours, minutes, seconds, I mean, yeah, that is a pretty high frequency still.
That's like 1 token every 3 seconds, roughly.
That's crazy. That's crazy. But like as a Solana and Pump.Fun warrior, Onur, what do you think is basically, if you would need to write a thesis for Pump.Fun in, I would say, 10 or 15 years from now, where will it be?
I mean,
If you need
10,
to guess.
15 years is the impossible range.
Completely dead.
Like, I think 10, 15 years is the impossible range because, I mean, in 10, 15 years, the only thing I would be comfortable with is Bitcoin. Maybe Fartcoin, but like, that's it. I think the realistic, let's talk about the realistic time frame, which is 1 to 5 years, maybe.
Mhm.
Probably 1 to 3 years, right? And I mean, I do think that Pump.Fun is gonna be huge because they generated an entire generation, mainly the Zoomers, that grow up with the trenches in their pocket in the Pump.Fun mobile app. And I remember, you know, when I was young, there were other things, like Twitch wasn't the thing yet. We had like these weird like chat roulette type of like video platforms. YouTube wasn't the thing yet. So, you know, like all this was happening somewhere else. I wonder, but this point here is it did materialize in some major platform that then captured pretty much the entire market. I think Pump is a good contender still. I think like tokens will be and exist and remain a huge market. And I think Pump is positioned quite well to capture that. And like, although the acquisition with KOL Scan was, you know, it's a small acquisition. It's like basically an indie developer hacker that built something really cool. I think it could actually be their path to success. Like, if they play this right and they make a few strategic acquisitions, maybe outside of crypto even, like maybe more in, you know, in the realm of influencers or, you know, what Instagram people are using right now. Like, that's the game they're playing. I think they could succeed. But, you know, I would still say it's more likely as of today that they will fail than they will succeed, because that's just the nature of venture businesses and startups. I think like raising money is impressive, especially if you raise 500-600 million in 12 minutes. That's very impressive, but doesn't really prove future success at all. And one big problem in crypto is if people get minted, which, you know, all the Pump people clearly did get minted, it can also create the opposite dynamic where you're not hungry enough anymore, you know, and that I think is the biggest risk right now. I don't think they're slow rugging. I don't think they're extracting or anything like that. If at all, it's psychological or it's just in the nature of venture businesses.
Yeah, it's not the
We
first time
shouldn't-
that we see this in crypto, that teams raise sort of money, kind of launch a good product, then they get a little bit bored or like satisfied or whatever.
Most of them don't even launch a good product. Most of them don't even launch a product. I mean, look at all the ICO treasuries from 2017. One interesting thing to note is that many of the proper DeFi founders, I mean, it may also apply to other sectors, but in DeFi, I just notice it because it's the sector I'm most in touch with. A lot of the ones who are building cool stuff right now previously failed with something else. So while percentage-wise, most of these first-time crypto founders are just slow rugging or exiting the space, almost all of the good new products in DeFi stem from people who have failed with something else before. I think that's quite interesting to note.
That applies to everything, though. I think that applies to founders in general. Like founders who have the breadth to stay in the game and keep building. I think, like, yeah, that's great. There's two categories. either you're like a 20-year-old category where it's like, oh, like young 20-year-old naive founders who are completely delusional, I'm always going to bet on them. Or you're like, no, I want like seasoned founders who failed 1 or 2 times, who know exactly the game, and then who still do it because they love it and not because like for some quick buck or something. But what are you seeing specifically, Max, in DeFi?
So there's Infinify. They do yield tranching. That is one of my favorites right now. They have pretty impressive TVL growth. I just released an interview with Rob, the founder of Infinify, on our pod, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, depending on when this episode will come out. So that is finally copying one of the foundational mechanisms that we see in traditional finance, where you can distribute yields according to the duration tolerance and duration risks of different participants. So if you're willing for your capital to be less liquid, that means being locked up for a certain amount of weeks or months, then you can get a higher yield on that. Whereas people with a high liquidity preference, which applies to a lot of crypto liquid funds, high frequency traders, etc., they get a discount on the yields, but benefit from the seniority of the tranche. So if there's any directional loss or principal loss, they're going to be the last ones that will be affected, and the locked up ones are going to eat the losses first. So I think that is introducing a very foundational mechanism to DeFi. Then, there's a lot of stuff happening on the stablecoin infrastructure side. I think it is very fragmented. Personally, I have completely lost touch with how many stablecoins are out there. On Pendle alone, you can probably buy principal tokens and yield tokens of 30 different stablecoins now. And I do not know off the cuff which are backed by what's the backing mechanism, what these stablecoins do, who's the team behind them. Whereas a year ago, that was very easy to do. You had a few large centralized players, namely Circle and Tether, and then DAI and Ethena, and maybe Liquidity, and that was about it. Everything else was irrelevant. So we definitely see that space maturing. It's also fractured a bit. So what you are seeing in DeFi right now is you have all of these different protocols trying to extract yields from these very isolated, siloed opportunities. And then you have others on top building sort of an aggregator of these niche opportunity exploiters. And then there's, again, like another niche protocol which tries to take advantage of discrepancies between these aggregators. So it's kind of a cat and mouse game right now. It's, in the grand scheme of things, more pleasant for people with a traditional finance background right now, I would say, compared to a couple of years ago. Because while the ways to generate yield and all of these paths have become more complex from a mathematical perspective, it is easier to understand where the yield is actually coming from right now versus 2 or 3 years ago, where pretty much everything was coming from imaginary token incentives and kind of this whole yield farming, liquidity farming game that was being played back then. By now, you still have to think about it a lot, but at least you're able to kind of trace back, okay, that's where the base demand for yield or the base supply of yield is actually coming from. On the other hand, with all of these structured products being built in DeFi right now, there is a huge amount of internal leverage being built. So if some of these base means of yield or some of the backings of these stable coins fail in a rapid amount of time, we could see a lot of forced deleveraging in the space. I don't think it would break any of these mechanisms necessarily. I mean, it can happen if the scale of the collapse is large enough, obviously, but most of these things are still over collateralized. You have liquidation buffers, all of these things. You have health ratios if you're taking a loan on something. So in theory, it should work fine, but we should be aware of the internal leverage being created on the DeFi side. In terms of ecosystems, most of the stuff is still happening on Ethereum. There's a little bit of revival on ecosystems like Avalanche, on Base, just because people are expecting an alt season. So there's an implied price increase in these tokens, which sometimes also serve as incentive tokens. There's
Just one question. Have you also looked into the activity, like TVL, volume, these types of things? Or is it just price now?
Of DeFi as a whole, or in these different ecosystems.
In these different ecosystems.
I mean, yeah, the activity usually precedes the price increase, or at least correlates pretty strongly with it. I mean, with Base, you can't really make any price correlations there because it doesn't have a token. Avalanche has gone up a bit, just like all of these other altcoins have, and DeFi is slowly picking up there again. How small these ecosystems are relative to ETH, it is very easy to invoke the impression that they're not doing well or there's no activity going on. Because if you have one or two very big depositors or people who withdraw, think in the direction of Justin Sun, who is like moving hundreds of millions at a time. And when you look at DeFi Llama and the kind of fund movements and money movements being tracked there, it's very easy to distort the picture there. But yeah, activity is picking up slowly. In terms of interesting new protocols, almost everything is happening on ETH right now. Solana is able to catch up on more and more of these primitives, but in the very DeFi native, DeFi power user circles, it's still very EVM heavy. Personally, I kind of hope that will change because I'm very chain agnostic when it comes to that stuff. If there's a chain with a good product, I think people should use it. I'm not one of these ecosystem maximalists for the sake of ecosystem maximalism. I think there's no point in that. But yeah, I think these other ecosystems are slowly picking up. Hyperliquid, of course, there's a lot of stuff to do. I guess Sui is also maturing a bit. What I do think will serve as a catalyst that could lead to at least a brief or a muted on-chain summer season or on-chain fall is that I'm very confident that airdrops will pick up again, even if it's just temporary. I do think that participating on-chain and just to keep clicking buttons is very plus EV again.
Yeah, resonates with me. Yeah, and I mean, if we are also on DeFi Llama right now, I think name-wise, not much has changed. But yeah, Hyperliquid, I didn't have the chance to play around with it like too much, to be very honest. So did you play around with it a lot, Max?
Not with the ecosystem yet. I mean, there are quite a few interesting yield generation opportunities. I forgot all the names because it's always some wordplay with hype or hyper. There's a ton of stuff to do there. I've been quite active on Hyperliquid Core, so the Hyperliquid DEX in the past. I need to be more active in the Hyperliquid ecosystem. I'm monitoring it quite closely, but yeah, on-chain actions have not followed through accordingly so far. But I do think that, especially in that ecosystem, there are going to be quite a few airdrop opportunities coming up. In terms of DeFi primitives, I don't think that there's anything fundamentally new on Hyperliquid so far. You have a lot of forks, a lot of copycats of the successful mechanisms that have worked in other ecosystems. So it's a solid ecosystem overall. There are a lot of DeFi power users, a lot of hungry capital, but it's not like there's a 0-to-1 innovation here that is going to manifest Hyperliquid EVM or Hyper EVM as the new DeFi behemoth. One interesting thing that is a little bit under discussed right now is the question of these DeFi tokens being investable assets or not. Because I think a lot of people on crypto Twitter are becoming aware of the fact, okay, DeFi has matured quite a bit. It's now stuff you can actually use. There are some products with Lindy effect. Look at Aave, look at Maker, look at Uniswap. But it is still an unanswered question whether these tokens are investable. If you look at tokens like Morpho, Euler, Fluid, many of them are also used as incentive tokens. So you're kind of left with the same issue that you had last cycle, where the supply of these things just got diluted into infinity. On the other hand, they are the only proxy bet you can make if you like the product. So yeah, I don't know if you guys are opinionated about that or if you're holding any of these DeFi tokens.
Not anymore, to be very honest. Just looking at the Aave chart, like Aave, wow, tremendous. They recovered very well over the past 2 years. I actually didn't realize that much. I'm also looking up Uni. How did Uni? Wow, still at 6 billion. That's crazy.
You want to know a fumble?
What?
I was one of the top ETH lend holders, and I didn't migrate.
Oh, how much did you fumble?
I don't want to think about it, but it's a lot. I ended up selling. I think there was some liquidity. I wasn't really aware of the migration. Also, it was a time where I kind of like was slowly zooming out. But yeah, it was like an easy 7, maybe 8-figure fumble for sure.
Yeah.
But who knows if I would have held until like DeFi summer and all these things. There's like a couple ifs, but Aave is one of the favorite products. One of my favorite products, to be honest with you. It's completely established. It works like a charm. Whenever I have like stables I don't really know what to do with, I just throw them at Aave because like I don't care about 5% extra yield when I can't assess the risk. So I love Aave.
Mm.
Speaking of, like the more Ethereum agnostic, side of the things, what do you guys like? How do you guys observe the restaking ecosystem, Eigenlayer, Symbiotic, etc.?
I don't know what we're even doing right now. Eigenlayer had this rebrand to EigenCloud. I spoke to some of the Eigenlayer DevRel people during Berlin Blockchain Week. And even after 1 hour, I was not able to understand what we're trying to achieve there. Is it now are they doing the same stuff like Akash, which is like shared compute? Are they doing Filecoin, which is like storing files on the blockchain? Is it just, and are they doing the same stuff that Celestia is trying to do, where you can just kind of use that chain infrastructure as the kind of settlement and data availability layer of whatever you're trying to build on top of that? I don't get what they're doing. I think restaking is such an interesting ecosystem case of inflated valuations, a lot of hype, but absolutely zero usage of the product. I mean, in all of these DeFi farming circles last year, Eigenlayer was hyped as, this is going to be a top 10, top 20 coin. Same with EtherFi, Renzo, Kelp, Symbiotic, whatever else was out there, Babylon for BTC. And it just like nobody's using the stuff. I think Babylon is now only among the like top 250 or top 300 tokens, where it was rumored to become like one of the top 30, top 20 plays just years ago.
317.
That's insane. What's the market cap right now?
124.
That's insane. I mean, people were thinking about some like 10 billion market cap or 20 billion FTV before it launched. So I don't think you can make restaking particularly interesting for retail users because it's technically too complex. I think most of the companies there are lacking direction, where they want to go into, how they want to pivot. I think EtherFi is interesting, trying to become that crypto native bank with the EtherFi card. And I mean, I'm not using it myself, but objectively, it looks like a very useful and very good product. But I mean, the pivot from being a restaking provider to now suddenly becoming a crypto neobank is certainly a pretty hard one. But if they make it, I think they're going to be pretty much the only one that can survive and thrive in the mid to long term. Whereas all of these other ones, they've completely fumbled their points and error programs. Everybody was just farming them to dump them. Many of these token launches have been delayed. There has been a lot of unprofessional communication. And I mean, frankly, ETH restaking is not being used for anything. The only way that ecosystem can have a future is if you are able to integrate these yield primitives of restaking into like other infrastructure plays, for example, stablecoins. I think that is what Cap Money is doing right now. So the episode with Dave from Cap that is going to be released today, so probably a day before or 2 days before we will release this one. And they're building on that primitive, but other than that, I don't really see any path to success there.
Yeah. Like, I'm also like super skeptical about restaking these days. Also, and that's like the most important thing, is I don't have the feeling that anyone is really building on top of it. Anyone, as you also mentioned, nobody is using it. So it's just parked liquidity in that sense. And I think from my latest update with the engineering team, there are still no rewards generated, like no additional rewards generated from restaking your staking rewards, like nothing. And yeah, it's a little bit a bummer, I would say.
I don't think it works, or it's not proven that it will work. So valuations and everything we've been discussing were purely speculative, narrative based. I mean, there's like countless examples. It's not just the restaking environments I'm talking about, but like a lot of these like technology products slash protocols enhancements, I think are completely overvalued. It's unproven. There's no product market fit yet, and we need them. But I think they don't need a token, obviously. Not all of them. And if they have tokens, I think the valuations will be absurd and down only if they continue doing what they've been doing, which is a go-to-market in the billions of dollars of market capitalization, which is why a lot of people hate the space. Because, you know, you buy something on Bybit, Binance, Coinbase, and it just goes down. And you think it's the new shiny thing. In that sense, yeah, I'm very skeptical about these, but we need them, and some of them will prevail.
Eigenlayer still has 17 billion in TVL. I just looked it up on DeFi Llama. That's crazy, given that nobody talks about it anymore.
Yeah.
EtherFi is sitting at 9 billion. Babylon, 5 billion. I mean, that's pretty easy to hit if you're focusing on Bitcoin staking. Then Rocket Pool, 2.5 billion. Kernel, which is Kelp, 1.7 billion. So some of these are still Renzo, 1.2 billion. Some of these are still alive, but yeah, I don't know what they're doing, and I mean, there doesn't seem to be any appetite for it from a user perspective. Maybe in the last couple of minutes, pivoting back to our market outlooks. So the bull market indicator or bull market peak signals from CoinGlass, which we will link in the podcast description, they are a collection of 30 signals that are supposedly indicative of the bull market peak being reached. 0 of these 30 have been hit so far. I think some of them have to be put a little bit into context, and I don't think you'll be able to repeat what you did in 2021 or 2017, because some of these that are focused on like multiplying certain moving averages or some deviations are very momentum based, very multiple based, and with the size of an asset growing, as we've seen with Bitcoin, we can obviously do not hit the same percentage-wise returns that we did in 2021 and 2017. So I don't think you necessarily have to hit all of them to reach the bull market peak. But if you look at the timeline, even amongst some very sophisticated and allegedly successful traders, there has been a lot of caution, a lot of like, I'm worried that the top is already in sentiment on crypto Twitter over the last 2 weeks, where we've seen like the first momentum driven and sentiment shifting run up in this year, since it's been down only since January, since the inauguration. So I'm reasonably confident that the cycle top is not in. July was quite joyful. There are some concerns about anal August coming up. Maybe we'll see a super bullish September following that. So what's your guys' outlook for the rest of Q3 and maybe Q4?
I love how Max is doing everything to get us censored and marked explicit. No, jokes aside, do you see my screen? I'll just share what indicators Max is talking about. So coinglass.com/bull-market-peak-signals. It's basically just a collection of indicators that have been used in the past or that have indicated a peak in the past. And to me, I mean, call me old school. I still look at Rainbow. I still look at like the ranges, and we're nowhere near the upper bands where it gets into heated mode. I look into MVRV Z score, which is basically determining some notion of realized, unrealized profits. I definitely look at BTC.D. And again, like we're at 61%. This is a little bit misleading. So I think this is, this is probably indicating a Bitcoin top, which makes sense. But the thing I'm looking for here, as I'm mainly exposed to altcoins right now, is BTC.D around 40-50%. Like, if I see that, I will be very, very careful and probably start DCAing out heavily.
Yeah, I think that's one important one to keep in mind, that just the context around these assets has changed so much. Just to put it into context, in 2021, we've seen BTC.D drop to around 40%. And personally, I would be quite surprised if we see it drop that much this cycle again, just because Bitcoin is now playing in a completely different league than all of these altcoins. So in order to see a proper altcoin season and Bitcoin still going up price-wise, but altcoins just outperforming, there is no necessity of this thing dropping to 40% again.
But that's just a numbers game. And we have more token than we've had ever before. And we have thin liquidity pools, which means the market capitalizations of these tokens can shoot into the billions in no time, which is why I think Bitcoin dominance will actually go down to all-time low. I think it will go down to maybe even 35 or 30%.
Do you want to let's make a bet out of that?
Let's do it.
Until end of 2025. So how do we want to structure it? So I'm betting that we will stall at 40%. You're betting we will go lower than 40%.
Yes.
What's the input? What do we want to put on the table?
It doesn't matter. We can just put like any number or like any thing.
One house equals one house coin, or
let's do. I don't want to promote gambling. I don't like gambling.
I like gambling.
Let's do a very nice dinner. Like, we're gonna whoever loses is gonna invite the other person to a very nice, dinner.
Wine and dine.
A really nice dinner kebab.
$5 and an iron. $7.50. That's the bet. Now we can do something nicer.
So until the end of 2025, do you want to give it any time limit?
I would say we can do until the end of the cycle, because there is a small chance where it extends to January or February. I think by the time we hit Q2 next year, we can call it a day and say, yeah, didn't happen.
So 40%, it doesn't have to close below it. As soon as it wicks below 40%, I have lost until the end of March 2026. So late Q1 in 2026.
Word.
Yuri, you're gonna be the judge and the
escrow. Let's put the dinner money into his contract.
The escrow of the Köftespieß money.
He's the Kobe of the size, which is not size bet. Okay, but just to finish this, new pool is interesting. Bitcoin net unrealized profit and loss. I may have confused it with MVRV. I mean, I need to look into the specifics. I just know that historically those have been very solid indicators. This is still a solid one, 4-year moving average. And then there's newer ones such as like MicroStrategy average Bitcoin cost. That's an interesting one. 70,681. Yeah, so that's a good one to keep in mind.
I think some of them, if you scroll up, for example, the 2-year moving average multiplier that has a price target of like 300K, I think it is rather unlikely we will reach that. But some of the other ones, like the Pi cycle indicator, everything that is pointing towards between 140 to 180K, I think is a realistic expectation to have for BTC. Maybe to briefly cover some of the other majors before the episode ends. Do you guys have any price targets for ETH, Sol, or any of your larger holdings?
I honestly
Should I start?
don't. I don't.
Okay.
But like the main, like the I think what is consensus is ETH could do 5-6K. 10K would be insane. K would be very optimistic. But I think like people feel comfortable could go to like 5-6K. So there's like not much upside there. Solana, I think it's similar. I think like 500 Solana is probably like Solana would have so much sell pressure if it goes to 1,000 that I think it wouldn't be able to sustain there at all. Like all the validators, I know validators which have millions of Solana, like not million USD worth, but millions of Solana units, tokens. So the moment Solana goes to 1,000, that would be, I don't even know, like I didn't do the math, but that would be crazy numbers. So they would all sell. So I don't think it can go anywhere near that price. I think it would probably, honestly, I think Solana will peak at $300-400. Hype, I think, is the one. I think Hype is the one with the most upside because they do have the 97% buyback. They do have millions in revenue every day. They have a product that works, solves a niche that grows every day. I think Hype can go to a few $100, and it's at like 40 right now. So honestly, Hype is probably the one that has another 10x in the tank. If you ask me, I'm obviously very optimistic as well, but I think it's doable. When it comes to Pump, I think, it's at 2 something now, which I think is quite low. I think Pump also can go to $10 easily if we see like a proper alt season. Other than that, like there will be some crime, like the new no, I don't want to comment on the new, but like there will be some crime.
Are you afraid that you cannot enter the US the next time if you're speaking freely right now?
I may or may not be afraid.
Yeah, I think
No.
Solana, what is important to note is that given how there are so many token launches on Solana, there's just a huge abundance and oversupply of tokens to sell your Solana for. So it is compared to ETH and the EVM ecosystem, it is very hard to create a sustainable on-chain wealth effect just through the price rise of Sol, because you have much more other tokens to immediately sell your Solana into. So I think that is kind of muting the price action of Solana. Also, my thesis around the Pump launch was that it is not necessarily going to drain liquidity from other meme coins, but it's going to drain liquidity from Sol. Because the narrative around Sol is, okay, Solana is the meme money. Solana is the proxy bet on the entire meme coin sector infrastructure. Now, with Pump, you have a much more proximate, a much more explicit reflection of that. Because now you can bet on that specific part of the infrastructure, and you do not have to hold Sol as the meme money anymore. So yeah, I think that's
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I think, and we've seen that, right? Like Pump airdrop was announced that it's not going to be in the near future, and I think all Pump tokens dumped 20% on average. Like there is proximity between Pump performance and Pump.Fun token performance, and I think that kind of like introduces a new era, and it's going to be interesting how that affects Sol.
I just looked up the hyper-liquid market cap comparison. So if it was to reach the market cap of Sol, that would be a 7x from here. Then one hype would trade at around $300. If it was to flip BNB, that's a 7.5x. It would trade at $320. And if it was to flip XRP, it would be a 13x from here, and it would be at $550. So if that happens,
just keep in mind that it's realistically never going to flip any of those, because I'm talking about scenario where those tokens, you compared them with themselves, will do maybe a 2x. So it will not do a 14x or a 20x or a 6x, right? It will only do maximum a 10x, which then still wouldn't flip a Solana at 400, and it also wouldn't flip a BNB at 1000, and it also wouldn't flip an XRP at 5. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. That's like the maximum in my mind for this cycle. But in general, like a 5x for Hype, I think would not be surprising at all.
Also with Hype, we need to keep in mind that it still has a lot higher FDV because a bunch of the tokens are still locked up. So there could be some sell pressure in the future, but I don't think that is going to be a large concern for the remainder of this bull market, which the consensus seems to be around 3 to 6 months from here. But yeah, I mean, coming back to my price targets, I think with BTC, base case is 140, 150, optimistic case around 180. If we hit above 200 or 250K, I would be very surprised by that. I mean, that would be an insane run up. I think that would require decent scale, nation state adoption, a bunch of Bitcoin strategic reserves across a few nations, maybe some central bank starting to openly accumulate it as a reserve asset. Just being driven up by retail hype and a few institutional players or some pension funds diversifying, I don't know if that is sufficient in terms of giving legitimization to the asset for players with severe size to push it to these levels. ETH, I think 6,000 is pretty coded. I would just start taking profits a little earlier than that, like 6,700, 6,800. 10K would be sort of the equivalent to seeing BTC trade above 200K for me. Solana, I would say it's 420 coded, and 690 on Solana would be the ETH 10K or BTC 200K equivalent. I mean, me spitting these meme numbers seems completely retarded now, but I don't think we should forget that BTC peaked at 69,000 last cycle. So like these mimetic numbers are deeply ingrained in this industry. So like I genuinely view these as valid price targets. I mean, call me stupid every day, but I'll stick to that. With Hyperliquid, I guess it's prudent to start taking profits around the $100 level. I agree that there is a chance we see like a 7x, 8x, which would put it around $300. But I mean, that would require a lot of TradFi players like starting to integrate Hyperliquid into their trading infrastructure and like massive amounts of volume settlement and new interesting assets being traded on this chain. Also, like if the entire equity tokenization, tokenized stocks narrative, if that was to come to Hyperliquid through some cooperation with New York Stock Exchange, with NASDAQ, with the S&P, I think that could propel it to like insane highs. On the DeFi token side of things, I'm very uncertain and reserved with price targets. I'm holding a bunch of them, for example, like Fluid, Pendle, Ethena, Syrup, F of X protocol. I do think that these are still the only bet you can make if you're bullish DeFi. And I think professionalization, institutional, whatever that word is, like crypto becoming more institutionalized. If you want to make that bet, and I mean, that is a very obvious development we are seeing right now. DeFi is the closest you can come to that. So since these things are not a claim to equity, often are not a claim to cash flows, not a claim to anything concrete, but are rather suggestion tokens, kind of like meme coins, but with underlying serious products, I'd be very opportunistic with them. I would make it kind of dependent on where BTC is trading, ETH is trading, Sol is trading, whether I want to take profits on these. On the meme kind front, I am severely overexposed Fartcoin. I do think this should also hit like these meme numbers of $4.20, $6.90, maybe $10. But yeah, I mean, if you compare to Dogecoin and that having hit a peak of, I think, 60 or 70 billion market cap last cycle, I think memes are still having a good opportunity to run here. On the lower market cap front, I would again just like try to pull something out once I've reached a certain multiple. If it 3x's, 4x's, at least take out the initial investment. Like, don't stay overexposed to these. I think it's very hard to make any predictions on that side. On the equity side, looking at Coinbase or Circle, I guess if we see a huge run-up of these again, especially Coinbase, I mean, Circle has already seen a huge run-up, but if we see Coinbase hit $1,000 or go beyond that, I think that could also be a good indicator of, okay, the traditional finance, retail, and like smaller institutions that are not on-chain native but want to get exposure to crypto have arrived. And I think I'd get much more cautious at that point in time. Another underrated aspect I'm personally paying attention to is the development of DeFi lending rates and fixed stablecoin rates you can lock in via products like Pendle. Because if you see these things rise to 30%, 40% APR fixed again, like that is at least in the last 12 to 18 months, has been a very clear indicator of the market's overheating, because there's a huge demand to pay very high percentage APRs to borrow stable coins to go levered long on some spot assets. And if you see a huge demand for leverage, that's just a good sign that stuff is overheating and that you should be a little more cautious. So yeah, that's on the price target side. In terms of timing, given how weird this summer has been, I guess it's hard to have a strong conviction there if it's going to peak in August, in September, in October. It is going to be somewhat influenced by the development in the whole tariff issue. I think if there are trade deals reached within the next few days, it is unlikely that we'll see any significant new announcements in terms of tariffs on August 1st. But if these deals do not come to be, we might see another like little sell-off liquidation cascade during the first days of August, and then maybe being stalled throughout August if the Federal Reserve, I think the FOMC meeting is next week, if they are rather hawkish instead of dovish. I think latest in September that would get picked up again, and we'll see prices go up from then. Of course, if trade deals are being reached, if the Fed is positioning itself more dovish than expected, we could see sort of a slow grind up only from August until, let's say, October or November. But I think with a reasonable degree of confidence, we can say that the cycle is going to end somewhere either in late Q3, throughout Q4, latest early Q1 in 2026.
I mean, this is the biggest dilemma I have. The biggest dilemma I have is historically, the craziest action happened within even just 1 week. Like there's always been this one, maximum 2 weeks, where when you sold before, you lost on literally generational wealth. Like you lost on another 10x, for example, and in the order of a week. And that's why I don't think anyone can time, obviously, the market. But there's 2-3 things I'm paying attention to. I think almost by default, if I'm in profits, I will DCA out end of Q3, start DCAing out end of Q3. But there are signals, and you could argue that the Trump meme coin is a perfect example. Like, if a coin adds more than 10 billion in market cap within 1 or 2 days.
Yeah, you should probably exclude the large ones like ETH, Solana.
Yeah, of course. I'm talking about like newer coins or meme coins. I mean, that's as top signal as it gets. Like, if I think Fartcoin is a good contender. Like, if Fartcoin goes from 2 billion to 8 or 9 billion in a day, that's like, okay, like you may miss out on it going to 13 billion, but you will sell at 9 and not back at 3 or 2 or 1 or 800 million. So
hot air has risen.
Hot air has risen. Dude, that meta was crazy, by the way. Like, I had the most disgusting coins in my wallet when Fartcoin rose. We're not going to dive in. That's a separate... Okay, you know what? We should do like flavor of the week type of episode next time and talk about the most disgusting... I mean, we talked about some pretty disgusting coins that were mentioned in the lawsuit today. But yeah.
We should have like a meme of the week segment in the show.
Yeah, look up Queef coin.
What the fuck is that?
Yeah, look it up. You'll know. All right, friends. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it as well, guys. Thank you so much for having me again.
As always, take care.
Take care, guys.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.
Good one, guys.